So I am probably the only fitness and health coach that you will meet in a long, long time that doesn't wear any wearable technology. No Fitbit, no Apple Watch, no Whoop, no Garmin. And this is why. I used to be obsessed with these things. Like I remember when I was first starting out in the gym, I was like 16 and I got my first ever tracker. It was a Fitbit and it was one of the ones that didn't even have a screen. It was just like the band, and I loved it. Like I truly did. I used it to track everything: my sleep, my steps, my workouts, how many calories I burnt in my workouts, literally everything. So much so that I began upgrading and I got another nicer, newer Fitbit, and this time it had a screen and it was kind of like a cheaper Apple Watch. It was almost like the Android iPhone debate, whereby it was for the first time I was on the side of the Android and I actually preferred the Fitbit comparative to, the Apple Watch. I don't know why. I've never actually had an Apple Watch, but I just have never really felt like I needed one or never really wanted one, to be honest. But I think where things started to get a bit weird when I was like in my early 20s and I upgraded and I got a Garmin and I was into like triathlons. I was running, I was cycling, I was swimming, and this really weird thing started to happen where things didn't feel like they counted if I didn't track them. So a good example of this would have been steps. If I was charging my device and I went on a walk or I just didn't bring it with me, for example, it felt like I didn't actually do those steps, which is just so weird to me. And where I noticed that, because I didn't really feel like this was a problem. I was like, that's normal, right? And then as part of my degree, so my degree is in exercise science. There's a lot of modules on public health nutrition, for example, and interventions there. Aside from that, one of the modules, one of the classes we were taking at the time was talking about fitness tracking watches. And a study came up that was referencing and citing people like myself who were doing exercise, that were doing steps, that weren't actually like seeing them as real objective data because they weren't being counted, even if their body was doing them. Which, yeah, as you are kind of, on the other side of the screen, kind of guessing is completely backwards. And then the second aspect to where it really started to get a bit dangerous and where it started to go the opposite way from just helpful kind of insight was when I started to like really look at calories burn as this like objective piece of data that would tell me if I personally felt like I had a good workout or not. And what it made me do was like start to see workouts as just these calorie burns, basically these numbers in the bank. And then what I would try to do is like offset my calories eaten by my calories burnt. It was this very weird time where I didn't see exercise as exercise. I just saw it as calories burnt. And this is really interesting. I think a lot of people do just say, calories in, calories out as this like reductionist term of, oh, it's really simple. Just eat less calories than you burn. But like we are so complex. We are so complex as humans. And the data that you see online is incredibly inaccurate. The calories you're burning, the calories you're consuming even. There's inaccuracies throughout all of this. You really think that, you logging a certain food that you're getting from one supermarket to another is going to have the exact same calories, for example? No, like there are differences. And similar to that, it's like, even if your watch is telling you you're burning X amount of calories, it's getting that through just your heart rate, right? It's getting that just through your heart rate. Sometimes like it's tracking kind of like blood volume levels and blood pressure. Like in Apple Watches, they can now do that. But again, this isn't reliable, accurate data. Like this is not A grade, like scientific level, laboratory level data that you can accurately say is being done here. And that's why I stopped kind of wearing them. Like I still have my Garmin. My Garmin is in the back there. And it's because I just stopped enjoying like the point of exercise, which is to exercise, which is to get a sweat on, feel the endorphins, like move your body, feel strong, look good as a result. And I didn't get that anymore. Like I just turned up to exercise and workouts like it was just a chore, like it was just logging into the 9 to 5 and hitting, my KPIs for the day. That's how I started to see it. And yeah, as you can expect, I just started to hate that process. And yeah, it just really didn't allow me to live in the moment, to be present, and to actually enjoy that time, which is sad, which is sad looking back. But I'm glad I've got a hold on it now. And you're probably like asking yourself, maybe asking me through the screen. Apologies, I've got this really itchy nose. I've been boxing a lot, and I think I've just kind of hurt it, and it's kind of bruised. But aside from that, you're probably thinking like, well, how do I know, what I'm generally doing, like how many calories I'm burning, how much I'm moving my body, etc., without kind of having this like tracking of it. And I think there's a time and a place for tracking. Like for my clients, for example, whilst I don't get them to track their food, I do kind of make sure that I have an understanding of how many steps they're doing on a day, for example. With that said, if they don't have a fitness watch, I'm not saying to them, hey, you need to go to Amazon and buy this new Garmin, for example. I'm just saying, well, hey, like, take your phone, go to your health app on your phone. We have our phones with us 80-90% of the day anyway, even when we are going for these strolls. So just tell me your step count. And realistically, your step count is going to be about 10 to 20% higher in real terms than what your phone will say. Because again, we have it maybe 80-90% of the time with us. And that's how we kind of reverse engineer it when it comes to steps. But in general, like when it comes to fitness, when it comes to health, when it comes to like, are you actually tracking towards your fitness goals, whether that be, just toning up, getting a six pack, whatever that is, you have a subjective feel on that. You don't need objective data to tell you this. Like you can see that, you can feel that, whether you are healthier, whether you are stronger. But objectively too, you can like go in front of the mirror, for example, you can go on a run, you can feel whether your performance is improving or not. And I think we are so tied to the data to validate that we just forget so many times and so often to just ask ourselves that question, because that is the only person that can actually tell us. And that is the only thing that actually matters, is like how we actually feel rather than what data tells us we should be feeling or how we should feel. A good example of this, right, is like I've got two use cases. One is like Whoops with sleep tracking, and then the other is like Garmin's with like performance tracking, right? I had a Whoop a few months ago and I was like, I really want to just get one just to see what the fuss is about. And, as you can expect, it came and I woke up one morning and my Whoop score was like 90% of sleep recovery. I was like, I had a crap sleep. And then vice versa, the opposite happened. I had a really good sleep. My Whoop had said my recovery was like 60%. And this really interesting thing happens, the placebo effect happens, whereby because I've been kind of told I've had a bad sleep, even if I feel like I've had a really good one, I go through the rest of the day and I'm tired or I'm lacking energy, for example, or I'm in a mood. And it's so, so interesting just to see how impactful that data can be. Likewise is with Garmin's. Garmin does this really interesting thing where if you're doing an activity like a run, it will tell you like 10-20% way through, like 5 minutes through, how you're doing comparative to previous runs, for example. And it bases this all on heart rate, etc., during that run. And what's really interesting is that there'd be times where I'm on a run, I feel like I'm doing really well, and then my performance score is poor, or it's good even, and that will impact how I run for the rest of that time, which is so, so crazy. But again, it's just like this objective data that we're getting that has that kind of cognitive, that psychological effect that we didn't even feel like we even needed at the time, to be honest. Like I wish there was a feature where you could just turn all that stuff off, because for someone like me, it's just so useless and it's damaging rather than helpful. Is there a case where like, these trackers are really useful for certain people and certain populations, of course, but I just wouldn't put myself in that camp. And that's because like I'm not training to any arbitrary goal where that data is really, really important. Like unless you're an athlete, I'm like, well, why do you have these? Like, what is the point? Like, do you actually need them? Like, we've got our phones to tell the time. Even if you want, a device on your watch a device on your wrist to tell you the time. Like I've got an analog watch over there that just can tell me the time. I don't necessarily need to have an understanding of my heart rate at all times and my step count at all times and my blood pressure, for example, at all times, and how well I slept. because I have an understanding of that. Like I know I went to bed at 10, 11 p.m. and I know I woke up at 7, 8 p.m. So I just do the maths there. I don't need something to actually tell me and then rate and rank how that actually objectively performed. But look, like this isn't directed at anyone or anything. It's just me speaking my mind and me kind of, again, voicing that we need to be focusing more on how we feel, how we move, and again, those subjective terms there, rather than what anything like a stupid little watch tells us. And yeah, again, that is the most important thing, is how we feel like we feel, rather than, again, what a device tells us. So I'll end that here.